Here we go. The weekend's over with one significant trade, might I add, with Seth Jones going to the Florida Panthers. So here we go. Till Friday, March 7th, 3 p.m. Eastern. Let's welcome in, still in for the vacationing, Justin Bourne.
One more day.
Like, where did he go? Half across the world here?
Well, Disney World will seem like half across the world. When he comes home exhausted, it's like waiting in line to get your driver's license. That's what Disney's like, whatever. So anyway, and he'll come back broke and ready to get back at it. So one more day.
For those of you listening or watching on Sportsnet 590 The Fan, Sportsnet 360, and Sportsnet Plus, you don't need to go to Disney to find a couple of goofy characters. We've got them right here in Gord, Stellick, and Sammy McKee. Derek Brandeo and Jake Schultz hold their own as well. And we're with you for the next 2 hours, including our Leaf Edition hour of the program. Toronto Maple Leafs finish off a perfect road trip with a 6-5 overtime win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Gord, is this one where you just bank the points?
Absolutely.
And don't worry about
burn the tape.
Style points.
Kippy, when that game ended yesterday afternoon, I got so caught up in things. I drove down to Maple Leaf Gardens. I thought I was still general manager of the Leafs. I thought it was a game for my era.
In the Adams division?
Yeah, that's right. You know, and 4 of the 5 teams make the playoffs, and we can make it with a 300 record. Then I pulled up there, and there's a grocery store there. They don't even play there anymore. So it really did remind me of that kind of game. So you had the win over Boston. They came from 3 back. Probably that was their best win. The game you did Friday, nice tidy win on the road against the New York Rangers. And then I love the absurdity every now and then. I love it. They always say coaches. I think every now and then a coach doesn't mind it. You're kind of at a party that you're not sure which way it's going to go. Like it could be a real good party or it could go south. You're not too sure, kind of thing. And that's what yesterday was like.
Anecdotally, and they mentioned it a bit on the broadcast, it does feel like 1 p.m. puck drops or earlier puck drops kind of lend themselves to a little bit more squirrely hockey games. And that one to me was just like a team that was at the end of a road trip and a team that's not very good and a really electric building for a 1 p.m. puck drop with the dueling go Leafs go and let's go Pens. It's just a really weird game yesterday where the way it starts, the way it finishes and all that. But yeah, you mentioned the coach. I wouldn't say the coach was thrilled after the game. If I do say so myself.
Is that part of your first clip of Craig Berube and his overview of the game? Let's go to that and we'll pick it up.
Listen to this and think if he's thrilled or not. Clip 1.
Yeah, it's not how we wanted to draw it up, but happens sometimes. We made a couple mistakes and put ourselves in a little bit of a hole, but guys stayed with it, climbed out of it, found a way to get the win, which is great. Just kind of a little too high of a vent of a game.
God, he's so nice.
He's supposed to
just say it. It just stunk. It's okay. It just
he's
stunk.
Supposed to say that. We're finding ways to win. What about finding ways to win?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, another great game. We lost
no.
by 1 goal. We've lost 8 in a row. Oh, we're trying so hard. Whatever.
Yeah.
I've been through that era. I remember with one guy, I was one of our scouts at the end of a game that we lost again, and he would go and go back to the office. He'd go, because he'd be blaming the coach, right? It's easy to blame the coach. You go, would you trade their team for our team? I go, freaking right, I'd trade their team for our team. Like, what are you talking about? Like, after, like I'm Mario Lemieux on that team, whatever, And so you get caught up in that kind of narrative.
Yeah.
So whatever, take the points and run.
To Sammy's point, though, it did feel like a Sunday night, midnight beer league game.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, did it not? Where it's like whatever. Last shot wins, and I'm not coming all the way back, but I'll just float around the neutral zone and hope there's a turnover. Like the cheating that went on from both clubs was like
Austin Matthews
scary.
will never win a Selke trophy if that clip keeps getting played. Right, the start of the third period.
Yes.
Raquel, where he takes the wrong route.
Yes.
You're kind of like you're still jacked about Matthew Nye's goal, and then you turn it on, and you go, this looks harmful. What? Can I read? Like, at least Matthew Knies was going full speed, intercepted, running for the touchdown, whatever. This one was like, okay, 1 goal lead, whatever. So, because that's one thing Austin Matthews has been doing well. whatever injury he may
Yeah.
or may not have, he's been very attentive to the defensive side of the games.
I do find that the way that game played out and the way that they've won 5 games in a row coming out of the Four Nations face-off break, including the first game back against Carolina. And I do think that myself and a lot of Leaf fans sort of have this feeling about the team where they've been bailed out by goaltending a lot of nights, and a lot of nights it hasn't really looked particularly great. And I think both of you guys would agree with that. But at the end of the day, you look where they are in the standings, you look at their banking points, you're hoping you're going to add something at the deadline.
Yeah.
Like, I do think you have to give them some credit for how well they've played. I mean, like how many points they've accumulated without playing that great in a lot of games.
You know, we're going to go into tonight, another team, and of the last 6 games,
Yeah.
right? What they're 5 in a row now. They've won
They won 5 in a row.
5 in a row, including the 4 on the road.
Right.
13-3 in their last
Yeah.
16 road games, by the way.
Some of the weaker
all
teams,
of them,
except for Carolina.
non-playoff teams.
Yeah, except for Carolina.
Except
Yeah.
for Carolina, who's playing like a non-playoff team,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so, where are you on? It's just you just play down to your opponents. Leafs have been able to do that in the past, but find ways to lose. It looks like to me like they're still playing down to opponents, but they're finding ways to win, which is a good thing. But outside of tonight, where they have to bank these 2 points, there's just no ifs or buts on it. They have to bank the 2 points. Now we go into this week with Vegas on Wednesday, Colorado, I believe, Saturday night.
Yeah.
And then Utah, which should be not an easy game if they're still thinking that they've got a shot at hanging into a playoff spot. We'll get a better idea this coming week, will we not, than what we've seen since Four Nations?
Well, okay, we're talking about a team that's won 5 straight.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about a team that's won 5 straight. So they can only play the opponents that the schedule puts in front of them. So, as far as, the playoffs, you're right. Because one thing when the playoffs start, those teams are gone, right? So 5 of those 6 teams, or whatever, 4 of the 5 aren't, and the one tonight. So 5 of the 6 won't be there. And to your point about raising up to playing a really good team, because that's what they failed. Well, 2 years in a row, they had Columbus and Montreal, but, all the past history. But otherwise, they've had to play a real tough team in the first round. So, we say, okay, if you come first, you won't have to play as tough a team in the first round. Okay, great. But you still got to beat whomever it's going to be. You got to find a way as a team and those bigger players. So I do agree as far as whatever readiness may be. I think Mitch Marner's already had a really good taste of playing elite hockey and winning and getting the big goal and being on the big stage and coming through. So, yes, can this help? Maybe for these goaltenders who are really unproven playoff goaltenders as well. So, yes. So enjoy this particular ride. It's going to get bumpier, but like I said, it will be a better test. I agree with you.
And after that game against Utah, the next matchup I think is against Florida. So they have a good test of games, but I saw somewhere that coming out of the Four Nations break that they had the easiest strength of schedule left in the NHL, the Leafs did. I think the winning percentage of the remaining teams was the lowest amongst. So there is a chance here for them to play some not so great competition and bank some points. And, like I said, I really do think you have to give them credit for accumulating points and finding a way. The general manager signed the goalie who has given them how many extra points this year?
Yeah.
12 extra points, 10 extra points than they would have had in years past. Like, they just have gotten clutch performances at the right time to accumulate these points, and it may not be pretty, but I got to give them credit.
Winning without Tanev, too.
Well,
yes.
That's another point. So you would think after winning 5 in a row and not seeing Tanev in there, you'd be going, wow, we're still pretty darn good. Is that what you've seen?
No. I didn't think they're very good on Friday against the Rangers at all.
So are they significantly weaker? Like you're telling me they've found ways to win. That's a good thing. So what does that do for Brad Treliving now going into Friday's deadline when it comes to his blue line here? Like, I'm watching this week going, life without Chris Tanev makes me nervous about getting out of a first round.
Well, whatever his big picture plan is, he's going to stick with it. I think Toronto's like, you got New Jersey possibly reacting because of the Hughes injury. You got Doug Armstrong on St. Louis maybe revisiting, saying, those calls, I'm not open for business anymore. I think Toronto, whatever their template was, their plan, and part of it would be to get a depth defenseman. I just don't see them doing the wow factor. I know people would love to hear and have the wow factor, but no question, they need some more. They need some more depth.
Yeah, I thought I was a little worried going into the playoffs with Chris Tanev in terms of the amount of ice time that you're still giving to guys like Benoit, guys like Timmins, who have had okay years, but there's been ups and downs with both of them. Big time. Myers plays 20 minutes on yesterday. Like, there is a world with even Chris Tanev playing at the top of his game where the decor isn't good enough as presently constituted. So I think even with him in the lineup, you need to make an addition to add a depth guy. Maybe not even a depth guy, like an impact guy. I don't know.
We watched the Florida Panthers in the Atlantic Division get stronger with Seth Jones. And does that put heat on Toronto in itself, Gord?
Okay. How's Aaron Ekblad feeling right now?
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. You screw around with the, of your club, and he's going, well, isn't that my $7 million? I've been a number one overall pick.
No, it's north of 7.
Well, whatever. I mean, but that's $7 million to apply. Like, are they saying Sam Bennett's not coming back? But anyway, to answer your question, okay, Seth. Let's find out what Seth Jones is. I think he's better than Aaron Ekblad. Okay, whatever. But I mean, is
Eric Ekblad's been good for them.
They're both solid. So Seth Jones, the wow factor, when he was traded 1-for-1 for Ryan Johansson, it was like, wow, that's a trade of 2 elite young players. And then
he didn't end up being the superstar that everybody thought.
No, Zach Werenski, far better player as we sit here,
today.
Yeah, and they were teammates, right? So the kind of thing is, all of a sudden you get a chance to go back in a pod, like all of us in life. I don't know. Same with you, Sammy. Certainly. And I was doing rink reporting on TV 11 of Leaf games. 5'9", 245 pounds down there. Whatever, sweating every time they threw it to you. That Matt Sundin up there wasn't the best look. Okay, career didn't go a long time that way. So whatever. So not that. So you get on radio and you get to chat and comfortable.
And now you're a star.
That's you said it well. There we go. Anyway, no, but I mean, just that kind of thing. A better environment, for me to thrive. Okay. And this is what we're going to find about Seth Jones. How much was he part of the quote problem in Chicago? And how much did it weigh him down?
He was a man on an island there. He played 24, 25 minutes many nights.
I think that's the case.
He's not going to have to be the guy there. It's spread out. You can keep him between 18 and 20 minutes. He can focus more on a better structure.
Isn't it like OEL?
The team. I think he's going to do well.
Okay. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was the second defenseman picked after Victor Hedman. Okay in Arizona, but so. Vancouver, a disaster. He had some other things that went on as well, but found his way in Florida.
Forsling's found his way. Yeah. Mikola's found his way. This is Bill Zito, and they've had a history in Columbus together.
Mm-hmm. And this is what the Red Wings used to do. You came to Detroit and you got your game back, right?
Sammy,
I'm just telling you right now, that's going to work out beautifully for the Panthers. That's like you said, all those names you laid out there, the support system, all the guys that play, well-coached team, good organization. He wants to be there. He's re-energized. That to me. But to answer your question about the Leafs needing to respond to that, I mean, that's a team in your division that you were in direct competition with that you could very, very well see in a playoff series in spring that got better, right? Like they subtracted Spencer Knight. They subtracted a first-round pick. Neither of them are going to contribute. They just got a player on their roster, added a guy. They are better as presently constituted. So if you're looking at Treliving, you'd feel like you have to, not say respond, but you do have to get better. You do have to add a defenseman. I don't know how human nature you can't respond to that.
But to Gord's point earlier at the top of the show, it might not be the big bang everybody's expecting in Leaf Nation, that it could just be right where they said that they would be. A depth guy, Yannick Gord, Scott Lawton, or a third pairing D.
Yeah.
Look at Ron Hainsey
and
in
that's it.
Pittsburgh, Trevor Daley in Pittsburgh when they got added, right?
No Shen. And St. Louis lost last night, but they did enough to go into this week to sit there and go, do we really want to trade our captain now?
Get to blow us away to do it.
And if I'll trade him in the summer.
Yeah.
Or with 3 more years left on his contract, I'll sell him next March and still get a decent return. I don't necessarily have to do it now.
Yeah. No, totally. And Leafs got kind of caught up with that about the sexiness of Nick Foligno. Granted, he did not have term left, but, it wasn't what they needed then, right? And also, when they're saying you got to pay a lot for him, well, then forget it. Forget it. You got to pay, you got to pay Matthew Nyes for him? Like, what? Like, and Sammy, you don't have to react to another team doing something. Like, if
you don't think so?
No, Kippy drives his Porsche. I got to stick with my Mazda. There's not much I can do. I just hope his breaks down. That's all. Because they're a little bit more finicky in that. I got my durable one, whatever kind of thing. I'll drive by when you're on the side of the road.
Yeah.
So I won't offer you a ride because you criticized me when I offered you a ride that time.
So who's the Mazda? Simone Benoit? Who's the Mazda? Who are we talking here?
Sometimes it's the driver and not the car.
Correct.
I just look at the Florida Panthers cap page here. And they add Seth Jones at $7 million, which as in the new cap era, that doesn't feel like it's going to be that substantial for going forward here. But they put Matthew Tkachuk on LTIR, and they now at the deadline, according to this cap wages, I'm just going to go off of it. They have 8.7 in deadline cap space as we stand here. So I think a lot of Leaf fans, myself included, are looking at what they've done already, what they potentially could do, and that's got people really worried.
Well, but they lost Montour. They lost OEL in the summer. Toronto gained OEL and gained Tanev, okay? The price of winning the Stanley Cup was a lot of guys after they celebrated for a week left Florida. That's just the way it was. So I know there's still the big pieces, but there are a lot of other ones that they had to try to get that comparable blue line like they had last year.
But now they've added Seth Jones, and they still have $8.7 million to play with heading into the deadline, which you feel like they're going to use, right? They're using the LTIR advantage. And, we all talked about how the Four Nations face-off maybe come at a cost for the Florida Panthers. Well, listen, it could be an advantage.
They also shed $4.5 million off of Spencer Knight. That's huge. So it's not the swing of just Matthew Tkachuk going on LTIR. They got rid of $4.5 million, so it's only really adding $3.5 million, if that, for Seth Jones. That's the added cap hit, $3.5 million, and then obviously Matthew Tkachuk now almost puts him in a position to go, maybe we can get somebody else now.
Yeah, and Dallas is in that position too, right? And they actually passed on Seth, or they didn't. They tried to grind it a bit more to get.
It does suck though, I'm telling you, and. We're going to...
What sucks?
The long-term IR and the way teams can take advantage of it to the point where they could add another 10-15 million to their salary cap.
Well, the players are really hurt though. But
I'm not questioning, whether people are cheating or not. I'm just saying that the Leafs, it sucks that John Tavares isn't hurt right now temporarily.
So what's the skinny?
Well, sure.
What's the skinny that you're? What's the skinny you're hearing in the NHL NHLPA negotiations? Right, because they seem to be going along. The collective bargaining agreement is up relatively soon. Do you think there's an understanding that needs to be addressed, or not?
I have not heard much on that front, to be honest with you. It has to be a conversation where this is probably starts with ownership. That would almost be an internal conversation between owners going, I'm sick and tired of watching teams add great players because...
But the players aren't sick and tired, correct?
You find ways to have your important players hurt at the right time. And I don't. I mean, as a player, you want as much money in the system as you can, and
which this does.
You want as many opportunities as you can get too.
So Kucherov wore the T-shirt, right?
I think the players would be fine I believe the owners wouldn't be.
I don't,
amongst
but
themselves.
I think it's something that have to be collectively bargained. And right now, Kucherov wore the T-shirt a couple of years ago, right? Whatever
Yeah.
millions they were
Yeah.
over, and it is a way to, I don't circumvent the caps a bit strong, but it's kind of been a way to make things to take a disadvantaged situation, turn it into a positive that they really hadn't anticipated.
It's a huge, like, and that's the thing that you said about the Leafs, and it feels as though this is something that's going to close up in the next couple of years, you would imagine. Like, it really does. And Tampa's
don't know. If it doesn't get collectively bargained, it may never close up. I don't know.
I feel like there's enough of a conversation around it with the Mark Stone thing with multiple years in a row, the Kucherov thing. And now you've seen the Leafs have two of their division rivals use this to their advantage. Because I saw a story on Sportsnet.ca talking about Matthew Tkachuk. Oh, he's hoping to be ready for playoffs. Gee, I wonder if he's going to be ready.
You know what?
Right? Like, I wonder if he's going to be ready.
I do too. And I'm being legit. I'm not being facetious. I'm legit. If he has as significant of an injury to his groin as many believe, I'm not sure he's going to be ready. And if he is ready, at what level can he come back off of that type of injury and hit the high note? So I'm not. It's not written in stone for me that this guy's just going to lay low in the weeds like Kucherov and then shoot it out of a cannon.
Yeah, there's the assumption that
How much you want to bet?
No, but the Kucherov, I don't know. The Kucherov example is a bad example. Significant injury that he doesn't get back at all, the whole playoff, or the whole playoff. He's a shell, relatively speaking, of his 100%.
I think he's really hurt. This guy doesn't. He's not a. This guy wants to play.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think he's hurt, but I do think he's going to be better game one.
Well,
that's where I'm at.
You're a good
got his
doctor.
medical degree.
You're a good doctor.
Mark Stone, oh my God, he limps off the ice at practice in the last game. He plays game one. Like, I would be willing to bet a ton of money. I don't have a lot of it, but that he would play game one. Anyway,
staying on that topic, Järnkrok was another guy that you could have easily found a way to say, stay off the books, bud, till the end of the season. But they brought him back, and he's in the lineup tonight, is he not, Sammy?
He's looking to play. I think he's playing on the fourth line,
right? And this is where
and
this is where the Toronto Maple Leafs are full value. If a player's ready to play, we're not asking him to fake.
Okay, but there's 20 games left in the season.
I know.
If there were 7 or 8, whatever. But I mean, there's 20 games, so I mean,
but the important thing is that he had his surgery.
Yeah.
So
you're saying tell him to be a good soldier and just show up for the playoffs.
He's been practicing. I'm saying that they could have tried to find a way to do that, but they chose not to. If a player's deemed ready, then we're bringing him back.
Well, and also keep in mind, you really have never got out of the first round except once, and then you quickly were thumped in the second round. So if you think he has value to the team, then you want him to get game experience, and so great if he sat out and you got that cap space, but he comes not really ready in game number 1, just like we're talking about Tkachuk on the Florida side.
And the Leafs, between now and Friday, if they feel like there's something out there that's of significance, they can still try to move Camps 2+. There's Domi's 3+, and then now there's Järnkrok's 2+. Like, those contracts could be moved if they feel like they need space.
Okay, so like as part of a package to get somebody with a higher number on their contract, but don't all those guys have? I think even Järnkrok has a potential no move. Doesn't Camp have a limited one?
Whatever it is,
whatever
it is, it's not complete.
Mm-hmm.
So just find a broker, find a third team, find a team. Like, it's not impossible.
Okay.
It even seems like JT Miller, and you saw in Seth Jones' case as well, that players are a little bit more amenable if you approach them and they can choose where they're going, right? Just rather than saying, okay, it's gonna suck for you here. There's been more of that kind of well, I mean, geez, look at the Rangers with Jacob Trouba and all. Like, look, Barclay Goodrow. I just mean there's been more of that kind of understanding that okay, they're going to make life miserable, get rid of you in some way, shape, or form. So maybe try to get ahead of the narrative if they're bringing it to you.
Few things from the game yesterday in terms of milestones. I saw that Marner 714th career point on his third goal to surpass George Armstrong for fifth on all-time Maple Leafs list. Matthews scores his 390th to pass Daryl Sittler for second all-time. I think William Nylander scored to give it was the 252nd goal of his career to surpass Bob Pulford for sole possession in 10th in franchise history. You know, they were talking about that throughout the game, and it really got me just, you know, not sad or depressed about this, but just how much these guys need to sort of have the playoff success. Because I think a lot of Leaf fans, myself included, I really want to cherish this era of Maple Leafs hockey with some of the best players that have ever played for the franchise. But I really have a hard time measuring it against the lack of playoff success and how deep they've gone. I shouldn't feel the way I feel about Austin Matthews sometimes. I shouldn't feel the way I feel about Mitch Marner. The same with William Nylander. They're three of the greatest players in franchise history. And I'm not saying they're underappreciated because that's not the case. It's Toronto. They're overappreciated. It's a complicated relationship. It really is.
I don't know. You just told us if they lose in the first round, they will be known as the biggest failures in Maple Leaf history.
Listen, I don't want to go there, but like, look at these regular season accolades. Matthews is second already. He was drafted yesterday. And it's just like they've had one playoff.
The man had a higher goal pace than Ovi's back at his age.
Marner is fifth all-time in points. Well, and how old is he? Like, it
is remarkable.
Oh, I know.
It is.
And that's where we keep going back to it, starting game number 83. Yeah. But I still love the era they brought in the regular season. And every sport has. Now, thank goodness the Atlanta Braves did win one World Series, okay? But they had some ridiculous run, was it 14 years or something? Like they were first or whatever. So at least they won one. You know, and again, that's what's lacking for Toronto. Washington Capitals won one. Now, Toronto, you're not even talking about going deep, yet. But hopefully, you're right. That'll always be lacking. I mean, guys like Daryl Sittler and Borje Salming had good runs early on, but no, they never realized the zenith of winning a Stanley Cup or even being in a Stanley Cup final. But you would look back on them as great players, as Hall of Famers and that. But
there was at times for Daryl and Lanny, to be able to have some
playoff success,
getting over the Islanders and playing Montreal and then losing 4 straight to the Canadians.
Yeah, but they got to the Final Four.
That was memorable. Leafs, obviously, with Mats a couple times, conference finals, Wendell. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
These guys need a conference final.
But because you're right.
At the very least, they need a conference final
you're right.
year.
We're going back to Pat Quinn's teams for 6 years. A lot of playoff success. You think of Gary Roberts and Mats and all those people. You go back to Pat Burns' teams, and we keep dining off. Oh, boy, if Gretzky's high stick hadn't happened, but Doug Gilmour, Dave Andreychuk, on and on and on, Wendell Clark, all those guys who played there. So, yeah, playoffs, there's no better time, like with the Toronto Raptors, that the city's galvanized, the country's galvanized, and those games live on forever.
We all love Rick Vive, Squid, Leaf alumni. We love him.
Yeah.
Right? But what should have been celebrated as one of the greatest goal scorers in Leaf history isn't, because of the lack of team success in his heyday.
Yeah.
He's paid a price for that lack of team success, right?
Well, they were bad teams.
They were.
Which is different than this team
But
nowadays.
He doesn't get as celebrated as he should.
Marcel Dion.
To the point where I believe his numbers should be in the rafters as the first 50-goal scorer in Leaf history.
Well, there's still time for that. Right? I would hope. I agree with you. I would agree with you.
But why isn't he up there? Because of the lack of team success. It wasn't. They weren't memorable years.
Well, I would. Wendell's up there, and he's not in the Hockey Hall of Fame. The others were all in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
But he had some memorable playoff.
Oh yeah, but I'm all, like
moments.
what I'm saying is I'm all good with that. That's what I'm saying about. I'm advocating for Rick Vibe. Once they, and I'm glad they open it up and appreciate
But
the ones that have given
is
you
it
great
is
memories.
it the lack of success that
I
holds
would
back?
say yeah, part of it yes. Other part I don't know who votes. I mean, can't Brendan Shanahan put him up there?
I don't know
Just
how it
take
works.
somebody to put him up there, right?
But-
If that's matters.
To your point, like you said, all that's true about Rick Vive, but we're potentially talking about the three of the top scoring players in the history
That's
of the
why
franchise.
I am kind of linking to those guys with the similar scenario that are you going to remember Austin's 60-goal seasons first, or the fact that he couldn't win a game,
I mean,
that mattered to a conference final or a Stanley Cup final?
Well, you remember the individual. Like I'll use Boria as an example, and then you say Boria Soming, and then you say it's too bad he didn't get a chance to win a cup, whether it's with Toronto or somewhere else. But first, I think when you look back, and Sammy, we're in it now, so
Yeah.
it's not. But when you look back, like you appreciate and admire and give credit for what the player was all about, and then whether it's again, I use Marcel Dion in Los Angeles. Tony Gwynn is a baseball player with the San Diego Padres. Just the list goes on and on about certain people. And we all wish there was a Ray Bourque finish, whether it's Rick Vive or Boria Soming or anybody. Hopefully not Austin Matthews, William Nylander, and Mitch Marner. That there's a trio. 7 years from now, you're trying to find them a place to win to get a great Stanley Cup run.
like I guess it's the stakes of anybody that plays in Toronto, but a deep run, they don't have to even win the cup. But you go to game 7 of the conference finals, or you, God forbid, find your way into a Stanley Cup final, even if you lose, these guys go through a completely different level. I'm so terrified of having this era of Leafs hockey where if they all, Mitch Marner maybe not going to sign another, we don't know, but if he signs another contract here, the three of them will be the top 3 scorers in Toronto Maple Leafs history. And they could come paired with 1 playoff series win or 2 playoff series wins. It's a tough pill to swallow. That's all I'm getting at. And I just hope they go deeper this year for everybody's sake.
A month and a half would do the trick.
Yes.
The problem with
the stakes have been, the goalposts have been so far moved.
The problem 2 years ago when they beat Tampa Bay was that you blinked and they were down 3-0 in the second round.
And the way
even if that series 100%. Went to a 7th game,
100%.
we probably feel a little differently.
Okay, there's my example.
Game
That's
2,
where
Bobrovsky.
That's where Craig Berube now. Talk about the last 3 games. I would have taken those 3 wins in the first 3 games against Florida rather, finding ways to win, because you're right. You got to, I remember being on with you and just saying, as a lifelong Toronto guy after they beat Tampa Bay, and oh my goodness, hallelujah. And then boom, seriously, like you're not ready.
Yeah.
Don't look like you're ready to start the next round, and you don't get going to game number 4. So that's where maybe finding ways to win when you don't play your best can come into play, because that certainly they put themselves in a hole right away.
All right, we'll take a quick break here.
I hope that didn't come across as too depressing, but I just watching all the stuff that happened yesterday with all these accolades, and they're breaking records and they're moving up. It's just
Sammy, we're Friday's trade deadline.
I know,
we're a stone throw away from the first round of the playoffs.
Okay. Typical Toronto media. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways.
No, typical Sammy McKee.
Yeah.
Don't lump us in there with you.
All right, let's go.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll bring in Luke Fox. Covers the Leafs for us here at sportsnet.ca. Kalle Järnkrok's return. Where does he fit in? The milestones, Wall versus Stolars, plenty more still when we return after these words. Welcome back into the show. Nick Kypreos, Gord Stellick, Sammy McKee. In a few minutes, we'll welcome in Luke Fox, Sportsnet writer, sportsnet.ca. We won't be in a few minutes. It'll be right now, Gord, right now.
Don't waste any time.
Don't waste any time. Luke, how are you, pal?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty excited to see Macklin Celebrini. Trying to find something to get excited about tonight's game. So I want to see this kid play hockey.
Was Gord mentioned maybe, is there anything going on with him? Is he a game time decision? Is he hurt? Have you heard anything, or are we missing something? And he's definitely in tonight.
Oh, this is news to me. I've been on the road. Is there an update?
Yeah. No, I think he got hurt on Saturday. It just was a question. That's all. It was nothing definitive one way or another, but there apparently was a little bit up in the air. But I take it if there's been no news is good news. So I'll make sure he's on the ice for you tonight, Celebrini, okay?
Yeah, I hope he's playing because they only come once a year. So I want to see what he has in store.
So from a point production, you couldn't ask for a better road trip, and I'm sure Craig Berube's guarding against the coming back home letdown here. They really need these points. It's going to be a tough schedule moving forward between Vegas and Colorado the rest of the week, but how important are banking these points when you reconsider winning the division?
Yeah, I think it's huge, Nick, just because Florida's right on their heels. Tampa's been on fire since, even before the Four Nations break, but certainly coming out of it. And I just feel like if you're in that 2-3 matchup and have to face one of the Florida teams, suddenly you might be looking at a 6 or 7 game series, and you'd be hard pressed to win it. Winning the Atlantic, which is something they've never done, the only division they won was the North Division. It would just set them up with such an easier first round. I mean, I don't know if any of those teams in that muddled wild card race in the East scare you. They don't scare me at all. You think about a team like the Detroit Red Wings that the Leafs handle pretty much every time they play them. If you could get through the first round in 4 or 5 games and healthy and rested, like how much better would that suit you up for a second round? So I think it's imperative they bank points against a softer team like the Sharks tonight.
So part of what we've been discussing is the same old thing, trying to quantify what a regular season could do for a better playoff output. Because, Luke, the regular seasons just blend all together. Playoffs is where you make indelible marks, and they have too few positive ones. So we're looking at finding ways to win, because that's what this recent road trip was. It wasn't the best teams they were playing, but they won them in different manners. Would you see that? Well, and Mitch Marner's already found a big way to have success on a big stage with the Four Nations face-off, so I think that's one tangible thing. But do you think that this is a positive in moving forward and getting to where they really haven't gone before, which, for argument's sake, let's just say past 2 rounds?
Yeah, for sure. You look at the Pittsburgh game, which was a mess, turns into a bit of a track meet. No goalie can make a save, and they find a way to come out on the right side of that one. Anthony Stolarz basically stands on his head, wins them a game, so they're getting goalie wins, which is something brand new in terms of the sheer number of games where you could point to the goaltending and say, that's who stole them the game. And then they do have offensive bursts, so they can do it that way. I think one of the most impressive stats for the Leafs is they take a lead into the third period. They're 27-0. So, it doesn't always look pretty. Like you needed the William Nylander overtime goal yesterday in order to make sure that record stands intact. But this is a team that has become very comfortable in close games. And what do we get in the playoffs? Close games. So I think all that experience in 1-goal games, into holding on to leads, buckling down when you absolutely need to, or having your goalie make the next save, even if he's given up 5, as the case was Joe Woll on Sunday, I think that will serve them well.
You're listening to Luke Fox, Leafs and NHL writer for Sportsnet.ca. Luke, just the feeling amongst maybe you and some of your colleagues down at the arena on how significant we could see the Leafs between now and Friday's trade deadline. Braden Shen from St. Louis seemed to be the hot button topic for Leaf fans last week. St. Louis goes on a run now, gets themselves within a stone throw of a playoff spot. For me, it's cooled down, but the thoughts about where and how significant Treliving will get between now and Friday. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Just 2 hours ago, I did a hit in Saskatoon, and it was 25 minutes on the Shen brothers and how the Leafs need to reunite them. So there's still a little bit of buzz in the air for sure about that possibility. And, it seems like, it's evident that Treliving isn't willing to meet Doug Armstrong's price. But I think of Armstrong's track record, and I think, he's really smart, and I think other GMs should probably take a page out of his book. He doesn't scrap and claw just to get a wild card spot. He's very good at identifying, do I actually have a contender or not? I remember one trade deadline, I think it was David Backes he sold, even though they were in a playoff position. Like he really values being a true contender over just sneaking into the dance. So I do think, he's willing to part with some of his pieces if his prices are met. But Brad Treliving is going above and to temper expectations for the fan base, for media. And maybe that's a ploy. Maybe that's, some gamesmanship because there's still, a week to go here before deadline. But he's really trying to temper things down and saying, and we might not make the headline grabbing move. Sometimes moving the needle a little bit is enough. And is he being honest? Are we only going to see Nick Bukestad, Luke Cunnin, Yanni Gord? Are we going to see something like that? Or are we going to see an actual guy with some term, whether it's a Shen or both Shens or Scott Lawton or maybe something even bigger? I mean, you're floating out the idea that they would kick tires on Rantanen. Like something like that all of a sudden is a headline grabbing move. But the way he's playing it out publicly is don't get excited yet.
Did the Saskatchewan station want you to sign their dad as well? 3 of them? I can just imagine 25 minutes in Saskatchewan on the sheds.
Lucas, has the Tanev injury done anything for you to say, okay, maybe we shouldn't focus so much on center ice and maybe the blue line might need some love?
I think the blue line does need some love, but I think center ice is still the number one priority. I think it's a relief that the Tanev injury looks short-term here. But here's a thought. They wanted to get Yanni Hakanpää with this grand idea that eventually he'd play hockey again. That's not happening. So that's a depth piece that they thought they had, or they bet almost $1.5 million that they'd have, and that's gone. So I still think they do want a right shot, preferably someone with experience. So, Shen, I don't think his cap hit is outrageous. He makes some sense. Ristolainen's available, more expensive. But, I do think that we're going to see 2 moves. I do think they will get some defensive depth. I'm a big Simon Benoit guy. I thought Connor Timmins had a good first half of the season. But now that we've gotten into the dog days here, I think, and the Tanev injury has underscored it, they need another guy. Because the idea isn't to play 7 games with this defense. The idea is to play 2 months with this defense.
Yeah, and, the cap world, just when the cap world started, you had Brian Leach, Ron Francis, traded for Owen Nolan. Although they did get Kelly Johansson, which puzzled me. So maybe they could get someone from Europe again. That one made no sense. I remember that back. So here's the thing, Luke. Like, Doug Armstrong's one team out of St. Louis. Like, what about New York and Boston, too? Like, all of a sudden, they're right there. They're 2 points away. There's like 8 teams with them. And I'm just really curious, like Rangers have made some seller trades, too. They've made both, right? The trade with Colorado was a seller trade. There's been buyer trades. So there's a lot of kind of mixed messages out there. And I'm not saying maybe a player comes free for the Leafs or whatever it may be, but there could be some interesting teams kind of changing their philosophy over these next few days.
Yeah, and I mean the Rangers. I think we've seen that for a couple months. Boston's the interesting one, right? They already made the coaching change. You got Brad Marchand there that wants to stay. Is it in the best interest of the team to re-sign him? That would totally change their culture if they let their captain go. But Trent Frederick, I think, is probably gone. You wonder about a guy like Brandon Carlo, Charlie Coyle even. Don Sweeney's in a really fascinating position because you consider in the summertime he went out of his way to bring in some high-priced free agents in terms of Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. They were supposed to take a step, and instead they've taken a dramatic step backwards. The Bruins and Leafs guys, they share the record for the longest active playoff streak at 8 years. And suddenly Boston's in very grave danger of having that streak end. And it could be Toronto with the longest active streak.
Wow.
Yeah. And, but I think the Bruins would probably look to, do a quote unquote rebuild on the fly type of thing. Like, I don't think they're going to strip it down, but they have to be serious that, they're not playing well, like by any category. Last I checked, they're bottom quarter in the league in both special teams, in goals for, in goals against. Jeremy Swayman, the whole thing's been a disaster since the start. Like, they have nothing going on. And I think they realize, and throw in the injuries on the back end of Lindholm and McAvoy, it's just the writing's on the wall. It's not their year. So I think they have to take a hard look and sell off a couple pieces, see if they can, get a bit younger and take another run at this later.
Well, we'll see what happens tonight before the Leafs hit the road again in Vegas Wednesday.
Celebrini's playing.
Celebrini's playing.
Talked about how he's excited to play tonight. So
Good
there you go.
news.
Good.
All right. Enjoy his performance tonight, but not too much for Leaf fans. Okay, Luke?
Okay. Break
All right.
some news, Nick. Break some news. We're waiting.
No, Elliot. Call Elliot. All right, buddy. Thanks for doing that.
Is Elliot going to burst on our stage
I'd like to.
like he did Saturday?
It'd
That
be
was
fun.
cool.
Kipper, you put him in a headlock if you did that.
That is Luke Fox. So, yes, I think Celebrini said that this morning at the skate that he was good to go tonight.
Good.
Yep.
So Luke would have known that if he didn't choose to go to the Golden Griddle for a stack of pancakes.
This guy's been on the road. He's grinding. He's taking time before the game to join us, and you're giving him a hard time. This guy's been all across America. He takes one morning skate off, and Kipper's all over him.
Gord, how many? You were a Golden Griddle guy. Are they still in business? Are they still around?
It used to be across from Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yes.
Golden Griddle. Yeah, absolutely. There was one near us on where the fan used to be on Holly Street,
Yes.
Young and Eglinton area. Yeah.
Permanently
Yeah.
closed, that location, as I quickly Google.
Yeah. I don't know.
Permanently
That's a good
closed.
question. Yeah. Is there a? I don't know
I don't
if there's
think it's
a golden,
around anymore, boys.
Golden Griddle anymore. I got to say, when I came in, I got to commend you guys because I thought at first, having teenage kids, well, they're older than teenage kids like you and Sammy, very civilized, both looking for a phone charger, right?
Oh.
And that's become the way of the world nowadays. But you didn't start blaming each other. Right? Like that. Did you ever get that at home? Like about where's my charger?
Who stole the
took
charger?
it? Whatever. And then you'd get pissed because they take your charger, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And you kind of say, look, can you just bring it back and all that, So
Yeah.
anyway, very organized, very civilized. You found one. Sammy found one. I was very impressed. That's the way teams should work, right?
Yeah.
That's what the Leafs need to do heading into the playoffs and in the playoffs.
Glad Sam and I could help you with your family issues, Gord.
Yeah. Well, the family, it's bigger family issues than just finding a charger. So I'll just leave. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. But that's the big thing. And right away, the kids get indignant about wherever their charger may be and accusatory.
Quick note.
Everything's great.
Leafs used to lose all the time in overtime.
Yeah.
They had a horrible overtime record. Remember they used to start David Kampf in overtime because they were totally broken by it? Now they've won 7 straight in overtime. They lost their 2 to start the year, and they've won 7 straight now. Franchise record.
Luke mentioned, matching a price for, possibly St. Louis, but you got to know for sure players are still available, right? You as a general manager, we'll get into this in the National Hour, but how many times you've made a call and the story changed?
Oh, totally.
Right?
Totally. And then there's.
Are they still available this week? They were available last week. What happened? Mm-hmm. Now you got to go in a different direction. We'll talk about that in the National Hour as well. Great job so far, guys.
We'll keep it up.
Keep the energy up.
We will. But how about the Maple Leafs? The Boston's out. The longest streak. 9 consecutive years in the playoffs this year. And if they don't win this year, they only got 1 playoff series win to show for it.
Ouchie.
All right, we spread the news nationally. Coming up next, Dan Murphy, host of Hockey Night in Canada. We'll get into the Canucks as well.
Oh, boy.
Plenty more on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. Do not go away. All right, here we go. National, Gord.
Love it.
National Hour live on Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver, Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. This hour of Real Kyper and Bourne brought to you by Bet365. Nick Kypreos in for one more day. I'm going to miss you, Gord.
Partying such sweet sorrow, Kyper.
But we have to welcome back Justin Bourne.
I guess.
wearing his paper bag because he lost spent all his money.
Yeah, he'd be willing to work overtime or anything for a while.
Yeah. Any advertiser, reach out to Justin Bourne coming back from vacation.
And that, of course, is the sound of Sammy McKee, Derek Brandeo, and Jake Schultz as well. In a few minutes, we'll welcome in Dan Murphy, who can give us the latest on the Canucks. And it ain't pretty. It ain't pretty for the Hughes family either, as we saw two respective stars on their team go down. Once again, Quinn Hughes in Vancouver and Jack Hughes was with New Jersey.
Yeah, and the Jack Hughes, I mean, colliding with Jack Eichel, they were just teammates, right? You know, Team USA. And it's interesting, Kyper, New Jersey and Vancouver to me are similar in that they were teams that started the season really strong, were in solid playoff spots, and then to varying degrees had their struggles. Now, the Canucks are more relevant in that, you know, they're technically tied in points with Calgary, vying for that last playoff spot. They got St. Louis nipping at their heels, Utah to a degree nipping at their heels. New Jersey has had a little bit of slippage. You know, like, I mean, you know, you still got like Detroit, Columbus, 7th and 8th, but they're 6th, New Jersey are, and they've been slipping a bit as well. So and they fully expect to be in the playoffs the way they played. And you have to think, part one is trade deadline wise, if it's a big injury for Jack Hughes, then Tom Fitzgerald's becoming a buyer. He needs to become a buyer. They got to get a decent body in there. Vancouver, they need to get healthy. I mean, they need Quinn Hughes, Demko. They need to get Elias Pettersson moving. I don't know. They've already made a lot of trades, so I don't know what else Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford have to stage there. But yeah, the Hughes brothers not playing are big stories right now, unfortunately.
Would you buy into my theory that the Devils will lose their third spot in the Metro and slide into a wild card while Columbus
this could
sneaks in there?
This could be it. This could be the difference maker. If Columbus has great momentum, they got Boone Jenner back. They got Marchenko back. I couldn't believe it. The guy had like surgery on his jaw, right? And he only missed 3 games. He had the 2-week break. So, and they got the karma. The Devils had been slipping a little bit, and then you get this kind of injury. So, yeah. I mean, what even worse, falling out of the playoffs. That would be catastrophic. But, yeah, I could very much see them sliding into a wild card.
Them sliding into a wild card, setting up the first-round matchup with the Toronto Maple Leafs when they win the division. Sheldon Keefe versus the Leafs in the first round, which I said was going to happen back in October. I will say, biggest news over the weekend, I think, was obviously Seth Jones getting traded to Florida. We talked a little bit about it in our Leafs hour. Maybe just speak on it again here. I think you liked it for Florida.
I did like it for Florida. I don't think the ask is going to be anywhere near or the weight on his shoulders like it was in Chicago. I think he could slide in there with a bunch of other guys who may have had a similar story, right? Kind of lost and then found themselves in Florida becoming Stanley Cup champions, right?
Well, and leverage-wise, so, you know, you always say, I don't like to be bullied into making a trade, but in Chicago, once he spoke out, that was it. That you had to, right? Because he's talking about, he was being honest. He spoke in a very measured manner, but it was time. It was time to part ways. Then you're hurt leverage-wise because he's got a no trade. So I have no idea what 31 other teams would offer, but it was irrelevant. There are only a couple he would look to.
Dallas wanted him.
Really?
And they had been in talks, but their offer wasn't as good as Florida's.
Yeah, whether it was to retain more salary, whatever it may be. But you're right. So Florida came up bigger. I'd have to believe in Chicago that you really believe Spencer Knight's going to be your goaltender. I mean, you got poor Peter Mrazek's been out there forever, just, getting beaten up, whatever. And you don't want to put a young goaltender in that scenario. They do have 1 or 2 in the system as well. So and Florida's a great landing spot. When remember Larry Murphy going to the Detroit Red Wings when it looked like his career was over and not playing at the level Seth Jones was, but adding to his Hall of Fame career and getting some Stanley Cup rings with the Red Wings as well. So that's an opportunity for Seth Jones.
I as a Leaf fan, this does worry me. I really do think that this is going to work out for the Florida Panthers. I think we said in the first hour, maybe you mentioned, Gordo, that they're trying to find out whether he was, part of the problem or he was the problem or whatever the conversation is there. I think there's too much in terms of raw tools with Seth Jones, in terms of his size, his skating ability, right shot, got the ability to fire it. He can snap a stretch pass. Him going there in that system with those other players, with that pedigree, with Paul Maurice, I have a really hard time picturing it just not working. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those teams now where I expect it to work out.
Well, they've been in the final twice. They won the cup last year. They've lost Montour. They've
Yep.
lost Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
For sure.
So they lost some depth, right?
No
So
question. But this really adds to I think he's like sort of not a Montour replacement necessarily, but kind of the guy that slides into those minutes, same type of money that he made. I just think it's a really good move for the Florida Panthers.
As far as the Winnipeg or Vancouver Canucks are concerned,
Quinn Hughes, man, that's
right?
That's
Like,
the biggest
give me
Jeez.
a 0 to 10 on the panic right now in Vancouver for their fans, anyways.
Yeah, well, Murph will fill us in more, but I would have to think it's like all great hockey markets, which in Canada is all of them, right? About, just, I mean, like the presence of Quinn Hughes is kind of like Brian Leach was, different kind of thing. But he's smaller, but he seems larger, when he comes out and just him being gone. I mean, geez, this stud defenseman, so yeah. And then Elias Pettersson, I don't even bring it up anymore because I'm tired of talking about it. I'm baffled by it, but he just hasn't got going. But the stud defenseman, I mean, right now I would guess Jack Hughes would be out longer than Quinn Hughes, not knowing either. Just it didn't look good what happened going on the boards, but boy, I wish they were both back.
They can't get Pettersson to shoot the puck.
Yeah.
Like, forget about points. It's just like, can you get it in that direction?
Well, and even like we've talked many times, and I don't want to start guessing or whatever, but individuals who have everyone has issues, and it's affected their play, whatever it may be. He just doesn't, he's always been calm and reserved that way, but it just doesn't seem engaged, right? For whatever reason.
Again, we're going to welcome in Dan Murphy soon, but where do you see Vancouver and Jimmy Rutherford, Patrick Allvin going into this week? Buyers, sellers, or potential placeholders? Well,
you got to leave no stone unturned. So buyers, if they're looking, they've already done buying, and like even a thing like when they gave up a first round pick for Philip Roenick, trade deadline, whatever, a year or two ago, that was a nice little piece. So I mean, I don't think the Miller trade had to be done. That's kind of viewed as a big trade, but I think they got to leave no stone unturned about whether adding a piece or two.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there. I know they've had a really tough stretch here. Their goal differential's -21, but like at this point, with the teams that you're kind of quote unquote battling with, like, don't you think the Vancouver Canucks are probably better than the Flames or probably better than the Blues? Like they're right.
They should be.
They're right there. If you add something, like I know it's been terrible, and the Vancouver listeners are probably like, "Shut up, they should sell." But I don't know. If I'm ownership, it's hard to justify it when you're right there.
Okay, let's welcome in Dan Murphy, host of Hockey Night in Canada, Canucks hockey on Sportsnet. So, should Sammy just shut up and
A lot of people think that.
And Vancouver should just buy because they're so close here to a first round and anything can happen?
Yeah. Some fans are checking out. Some fans are angry. Some fans don't understand how they're in this position where 1 year ago, they were at the top of the division and Pettersson was leading the league in scoring and he just signed a contract extension. But the one thing I'll say is, knowing this management, knowing the way Jim Rutherford is and Patrick Allvin, the general manager, cut from the same cloth, I don't see these guys waving the white flag with a week to go. They are going to do what they can to help this team make the playoffs. They are going to be buyers. They have a ton of cap space. I don't think they'll hit the rental market per se. I think they're probably looking to add a center, a middle 6 that could add some punch to the offense. But I don't see this team selling off assets. Perhaps, yes, they do trade Besser to get something in return, a draft pick, and then move that to get the player they're looking for. Just knowing this management group, they're not going to sit idly by or sell. I just don't see it happening.
That seems like a lot of work in a relatively short week right now. We haven't heard anything up until this point, but is there room for Jimmy to maneuver all of this between now and Friday?
Well, I mean, I think since this management group took over and Patrick was named GM, there hasn't been a more active general manager in the National Hockey League. I mean, these guys, they move off mistakes quickly. They made the JT Miller trade and followed that up with the trade with the Penguins to get Pettersson and O'Connor, have re-signed those guys right away. Hedel has looked pretty good. So I don't know what is possible. I think they'd like to get like a forward in his 20s that has term left. I think that's the type of player they're looking for. Like we've heard in the past, Dylan Cousins or Josh Norris. These types of players, I think, is what they'd prefer to get. Heck, maybe even a Ricard Raquel, who's got a few years left in Pittsburgh. I don't think they want rentals, but I do think they want to get a forward in here to try to help this team. But I would say this, no matter what they do, I think they're probably talking to Quinn Hughes because this is the most important player with this organization. You kind of want to keep him happy. I don't think he'd want anything to do with a rebuild right now. So I think that would be another reason why they're going to try and beef things up to make the playoffs and see what can happen.
So you mentioned names like, say, Dylan Cousins. I mean, those are like kind of real hockey trades. Any chance Elias Pettersson's traded?
I mean, I would never say never, but I only think that his value has diminished since, the night that Rantanen went to Carolina, and it seemed like they were just as close to making the trade for Pettersson. I think this guy has to be built back up. I don't know what the market would be for him. I think at the start of the season, you would have had a really robust market. I don't know how many teams could handle the contract now, and if they just view him as too much of a project. I think the plan is to keep him right now. I know his no trade doesn't kick in into July 1st, but I mean, I just don't think with the asset being this distressed, I don't think that they're just willing to. I mean, I guess they could look at like what the Kings did with Dubois last year. What was it, Kemper they got back? Maybe something like that, but I don't see them doing that before the deadline. That's more something in the summer.
How much pressure would a Jimmy Rutherford be feeling from ownership, Aquilini family, to not lose the playoffs? And if that's the case, then Murph, does Brock Besser have a chance to be that guy that they just rent their own player and hope that a deal can be worked out at some point in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not like the insider like the other guys. I've heard the stuff about a 5-year contract being offered. I think Besser in his camp would like 6, 7, and 8 because he can get that in Vancouver. I don't think that is going to happen. So, is there still a few days of chicken to be played here between these two groups? Maybe. But certainly they could hang on to him. I think his play has dipped since the JT Miller trade. They were a really good tandem together. I think that the noise does affect Brock a little bit. He's said that before, that it can seep into his game. It seems like we're talking about him every year at this time. He's the longest tenured Canuck. He has scored at a pretty good clip since becoming a Vancouver Canuck. But I could see them hanging on to him and just using him to see if they can get the playoffs. And, I guess chance losing him for nothing in the offseason. But I wouldn't blame Brock either. Like, I wouldn't want to leave 2 years on the table at $15 million total at the end of my career or near the end of my career either. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because he is a player that the market loves as a person. But I also know that a lot of the market doesn't want to see the Canucks go to 8 years or 7 years with this player at this point.
So, Dan, we're just talking about, in Jack Hughes' case in New Jersey, if he's out like we think, Tom Fitzgerald, all of a sudden, it's got to be a buyer to try to get something comparable, even a rental. So I'm curious. I know injuries there's never complete disclosure or clarity, but what is the sense about Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko as far as their status goes?
Well, I can't say. I mean, Demko, I think, has skated 3 times now. He didn't travel with the team on the last road trip, which was a disaster of a trip, 1-4 on that one. That Quinn missed 6, came back for 2, and then couldn't play the final 10 minutes in Seattle. And the head coach said yesterday he's tweaked something, and it's not related to the injury that caused him to miss those 6 games. They're hoping he will practice tomorrow. They had a day off today. They're hoping he'll practice tomorrow. But let's be honest here. I mean, they were just starting to ramp him back up to get back into, the form we saw him at the start of the year and middle of the year. And then he goes out again by tweaking something. I mean, I just don't know how much stress you can put on this guy. He seems to be carrying the team by himself when he's out there. As for Demko, the fact that he's skating is good, but you feel bad for the guy. But this year it's been a lot of stops and starts. It's been one step forward, two steps back. And if I was him, seeing now that Lankin has signed that contract, if I was him, I'd make sure I was 100% healthy by the time I came back. And I'm not saying he's come back before he was 100% before, but he should absolutely make sure he's 100% before he comes back again for this team this season.
As far as the blue line is concerned here, without Quinn Hughes, how do you picture it without any significant change on the back end?
Well, I mean, I guess they got to go with what they have right now. I think that if they are going to make a trade, Soucy is the name that you see potentially being moved out to free up some salary. They really like what this Elias Pettersson has brought. They haven't taken him out of the lineup. It's kind of been more. I mean, Julesen's now gone for the season, hernia surgery. So I guess they'll go with what they have. We've only seen Victor Mancini one time, so they do have some options on defense. And I will say this, Tyler Myers, he's had his moments where he's taken heat in this market. He has been excellent again recently for this team. So I just, you're going up now. It's not just them in Calgary. It's Utah and St. Louis as well. And if you have to go another stretch here without Quinn Hughes or with a Quinn Hughes at 70%, this club's going to be in tough, considering the way they've had problems scoring. Unless they can somehow add some scoring pop, it's going to be a real fight to the finish line with Hughes or without. But without him, I mean, man, that might just be too steep a hill to climb.
You kind of mentioned it, that it seemed like a nice, tidy 9-team battle for 8 spots for a long, long time. And now St. Louis very much in the picture. And just, obviously, if you're Vancouver, just go win your games, okay? Take care of it that way. But how do you handicap the Calgary Flames and the St. Louis Blues teams at the three-quarter pole now?
Well, I'll say this. I mean, we just saw Salt Lake, and, man, they have some dynamic young forwards that seem to be starting to elevate their games. The Genthers, of course, Keller, Cooley. So I like them as a team on the rise. St. Louis, I mean, maybe the Binnington bump. They definitely have some experience in that room. And maybe right now, Army is saying, listen, you guys have to blow the doors off me with an offer for Parayko or for Shen, because I got a shot at making the playoffs here, and I have a goaltender that's done it before, who's very confident after the Four Nations. So I would say, if I'm handicapping it, I like St. Louis better than Calgary. And I probably like St. Louis a little bit better than Utah too. But I mean, Dustin Wolf's been all world. But they seem to be kind of in the situation Vancouver is Calgary. They're having trouble scoring.
Murph, let me ask you about Rick Tocchet and his future and the level of maybe frustration trying to balance this whole season out, and where you think he is short-term or long-term for this organization.
Well, I mean, I'll say short-term. I think you're right. He's probably at his wit's end a little bit. It has been one heck of a season, from cancer diagnoses to personal leaves to infighting to injuries to your top players to trying to get guys going. So I would think probably he's had easier years. Like, he spoke yesterday after the skate, and although he wasn't specifically asked about Pettersson, he just asked about what he needs to see more from guys, and all the things that he said, he was probably speaking directly to Pettersson with the ones he was saying. So I think he's had a tough year, a frustrating year. There is another year, team option. And I don't think Tocchet's a quitter. I think he still likes this job, likes this market. I don't know what else might come up out there. Boston, is that a better situation? If Sacco is not going to be around, he's just an intern. So I have a tough time saying what will happen beyond this year. But man, when this year's done, I hope that Rick has himself a good, quiet couple of weeks, because he's deserved it. If he had hair, it would have been pulled out by now, and he'd look the way he does.
You alluded to the fans earlier, so I'm just, so the overall, hey, all Canadian-based ones, big cities are tough markets, and I'm just, I'm curious, like where the fans are, how they're split. I mean, is there optimism? Are they fed up? Like what, because man, last year talk about riding high with the playoff success, and then to start the season that way, and then to be in this kind of predicament that seemingly there's no end of right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some frustration with the fan base as well, just because there was hope, Gord, going into this year. Like there was legitimate hope. I think only Edmonton and maybe Colorado had better odds, like to make it to the Cup final at the start of the season. So the betting markets were even on them. And just with everything that happened, some of it's unforeseen, of course. But of course, when it was Miller versus Pettersson, the market was split. Some people were Team Miller, some were Team Pettersson. So you pissed off half the fan base there when you made that one trade. And now it kind of seems it's gone to Team Pettersson versus Team Tocchet, that can't coach the offense because the team can't score. So not only was there some infighting with the team, there's been infighting with the fan base. And it wasn't that way 12 months ago because everything was going right. This year just seems like everything has gone wrong.
It almost seems now in 2025 that there are challenges for every Canadian market, probably led by taxes more than anything else for potential players to be traded to a Canadian club. But do you think with everything that's gone on in Vancouver that many guys would be nervous to go into that scenario right now?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I still think the city is desirable, but you're right. I mean, the tax situation. I mean, the one thing that I ever hear, though, when people talk about like getting taxed more in a Canadian market, it's true, but you're also living in a Canadian city getting paid with American dollars.
Big time.
So, your money's going a lot further in that, whether you're renting or if you bought or something like that. I mean, your money's going a lot further. So I always kind of weigh those things out as even. But I think players will go to a team that wins, that has a chance to win, that they like the coach. And these are all things that, the Canucks had going for them in the summer. This year, not as much. But I always think that if the situation on the ice is good, you're going to get players, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, people want to play in Edmonton right now. I'm nothing against Edmonton, but before they were winning, McDavid was there. Not a lot of guys did. So I just think that if they can somehow turn things around on the ice, that won't be a problem. If they can't, there's going to be some issues.
Well, it won't help you, but our daughter moved to Vancouver a month ago, but she doesn't play in the NHL. So sorry, but so she's liking it out there. Now, give me one or two good stories, like one or two that, you know what, we're at the 60-game mark, and this has been, whether it's a pleasant surprise or just beyond Quinn Hughes, obviously, or just, a solid performance.
Well, I mean, Quinn Hughes is the obvious one. I mean, I think he probably could have been before these injuries in the Hart Trophy conversation, just because with him on the ice, they were a top 3 team. Without him, they're a bottom 3 team. So that was one. I still think DeBrusk's been a good story. He's on a career, a path for career high goals. He's been the streaky guy we've seen. And you know what? I gotta throw some flowers to Connor Garland. I just think that he, day in, day out, he competes. He plays much bigger than his size. He's consistently a play driver. So I think Garland has been a good story for this team too. And then if you're looking at the young player like Elias Pettersson, he went in the lineup and he has not come out. And Rick Tocchet does not want to pull him out. So I think that that's a positive story too. And then if you look with Tom Willander maybe coming before this season's over, who knows? But as opposed to last year, there's fewer good stories, but there are still some pretty good ones. And the fact that they've gone through all this, and like we've talked about before, Joshua cancer, Forbort leaving, his father died, Besser month gone concussion, Miller absence, Hronek hurt, Hughes hurt again, Demko hurt. Through all that, they're still right there in a playoff spot. So I think that they have a chance to put a lot of garbage behind them with a good 20 games here. And I think that would do a lot for the players in that locker room, even if they lost first round in not so dramatic fashion to Winnipeg. I think it would do a lot for those guys in the room just to come out the other end and say we had maybe the most difficult year ever, and yet we still found a way to make it in the playoffs. So I think that's really a good goal for the players on the ice as well.
It's going to be a fascinating finish here to the trade deadline. Yeah, I tell you what, it's never a dull moment out there, is it, Murph?
No. I've been hardened by the last decade. I'll give you that. 15 years.
Somehow I think you guys wouldn't have it any other way.
First 10 years were gravy. West Coast Express, the Twins, Luongo, you know.
Hang in there, Murph. Hang in there, buddy. Really appreciate it. Thanks for doing this.
All right, take care.
So
Love that guy.
now you got the Winnipeg Jets, who
Never lose.
never lose, but like almost like a perfect season right now. They need to talk, maybe just a little controversy.
Well,
Do we need controversy out of Winnipeg to talk to them, Gord?
Well,
Talk
maybe
about 'em.
it wouldn't hurt. I mean, the two last perfect seasons, the Boston Bruins a couple of years ago and the Tampa Bay Lightning when they played Columbus in the first rounds, that they were first-round exits. So I don't know. You need a little bit like you guys looking for your phone charger earlier. Something, some bite.
What does that
Some bite.
say about our society that we're not talking about Winnipeg, but we like to talk about like the fire sale or the, thing like it world's blowing up, Gord? What does that say about us?
Well, I think it's more the sports analogy stuff because everyone, if you're a fan, you're a GM of all of the teams you're a fan about. So if things are going well, you just sit back, enjoy it. You still say, geez, we haven't done it in the playoffs. Like Winnipeg, Carolina, Toronto are three teams that have never had recent history, haven't matched up playoff success to regular season success, whereas teams like Florida have and whatever. But yeah, I don't know, whatever. It's like it used to be about when it bleeds, it leads was the kind of story for tabloid magazines and, whatever. And basically we like the trade rumors,
Yes.
these salacious stories. What's going on there?
Yes.
Why are these guys not getting along?
Sort of like your wife, Lisa, she's attracted to the bad boys.
That's right.
You're a bad boy, Gord.
Listen, as a City News 680 alum here, working for 2 years, if it bleeds, it leads. Like it's the way it goes. But here, if we're gonna do, our new favorite segment, Kyper, is Jets talk, and if we're gonna do some Jets talk, they are 42-15-4, 88 points in 61 games so far this year, plus 71, 23-5-4 at home this year, 19-10-0 away from home. Unbelievable season.
Nathan McKinnon scored on Connor Hellebuck in the championship game, the Four Nations.
No, there's no
yeah.
negative in Jets talk.
Yeah.
Only positive.
Well,
Only positive.
by the way, what gang would
Hellebuck he has to win 4 rounds.
But
That's the only thing left.
They're going to get the worst team in the West in the playoffs, right? In years past, they've been in that 2-3 matchup where they've had to go up against the like the Avs last year and all these other. It's much like the Leafs. Get an easier first-round matchup. Let Connor Hellebuck get his legs under him in some big games and go from there. I do have a good feeling about the Jets this year. I really do.
What gang would I belong to, Kyper, as a bad boy? It wouldn't be a very good one. It wouldn't be a very tough one.
Give me the commercial break, and I'll remember a few Happy Days gangs that Potsy and Ralph.
Yeah, whatever the ones that come in with the windbreakers. To Arnold's, yeah.
Arnold's.
Let's do game time quickly before we go to break. It was game time presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's ever ordinary at Bet365. It's 19 plus, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. I was looking at the Leafs game tonight. Leafs are huge favorites on home ice, as you would imagine. But I forgot that there is a returning player for the San Jose Sharks.
The lily pad.
Timothy Liljegren making his triumphant return to Scotiabank Arena with all those amazing memories that he has made with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And as all Leaf fans know listening to this, there is nothing like a returning sort of fringe player. There is no power they have like scoring against the Leafs when they return. So I am going to test those powers with a Timothy Liljegren goal tonight at plus 1,400. There has been a million guys that have come back against the Leafs and scored a goal against them when they used to play for them. So I am testing the limits of that by picking a Timothy Liljegren goal against the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. Thoughts?
What's going to be on his video?
I hope
they'll give him. They'll give him a longer.
Exclude some bad pinches.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
So they're going to give Timothy Liljegren a longer return video than they did for Mitch Marner for setting up the winning goal for Team Canada in the Four Nations faceoff. That's great. Anyways, moving on.
Ouch.
Wow.
Excellent game tonight in Florida. The Tampa Bay Lightning in Florida to take. Well, they're always in Florida, but they're in Sunrise to take on the Florida Panthers. They are underdogs against the Panthers, plus 135. The Florida Panthers, minus 160. So really good matchup there. And Sens desperate for a win in the Washington, take on the Capitals. We'll talk about this a little bit after the break, but Ovi only 10 away now from breaking the all-time goal-scoring record. Unbelievable. Anyways, that was Game Time presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus. Ontario only. Please play responsibly.
Okay, we'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll get into the latest I have on Sportsnet.ca, updated list of who may stay, who may go, moving target. You would have thought by now, Gord, the buyers and the sellers would be well established. Might not be the case just yet.
Changed on the weekend, yeah.
Changed on the weekend. We'll get into that and more. Brad Marchand, staying or going in Boston? We discuss next when we return to Real Kyper and Bourne. The Kypreos, Gord Stellick.
Last time, Kyper.
Last hurrah. Sammy McKee.
Closing time.
As a reminder, this hour of Real Kyper and Bourne brought to you by Bet365. So, Gord, we're going to get into maybe a little discussion on the Boston Bruins, but I want to lean a little bit towards your stint as a general manager for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you were part of some trades and just the whole, what are general managers feeling today going into Friday, and how much pressure they may have on improving the team or making a big splash or getting it into a playoff scenario. You know, take us back to your days with some of the trades that you made and maybe some of the pressures that you felt to make them.
Yeah, and so a couple of years with New York, mostly with Toronto, right? And only 2 years in Toronto being in the big chair, but a part of it before and other things. And again, the one good thing, and even before a Cap era, I always talk about Ken Reggett in the sense that he was wanted by Bobby Clark in Philadelphia, Jerry Meehan in Buffalo, and David Poile in Washington. So that's what you want when you're taught. So it ends up being an ongoing dialogue that, okay, you got a couple of suitors. In that case, we're going to make the trade. The suitors know that you're not BSing them because quite often there's elements of poker that go into it as well. So that was one neat part about the whole negotiation process to try to get the best deal, probably like Chicago tried to do with Seth Jones, right?
Was the Reggett a trade deadline deal?
Yeah, 2 first-round picks.
Yep.
So anyway, but the other part, 21 general managers back then. There's 32 now, but there's still things about being human. There's still some that are gunslingers. I think Jim Rutherford's one. There's still they like to kind of, kind of said, yeah, I like it. I know Patrick Alvin's the general manager, but I mean, that attitude. There is pressure from owners as well. I don't know how. I'll use Boston as example. Again, I have no idea behind the scenes, and Cam Neely's certainly pressure from a president as well. Whatever about hey, are you doing something? And quite often, general managers might feel that kind of pressure. Then there's others about am I sending a message in the dressing room? Like they're going to receive this player well, or it will disrupt the chemistry. What's going? So you're looking at all those different kind of components, and then you also, Nick, what's happened is you've got a lot of balls out there, and you have to start bringing them in a bit, okay? You got to start bringing them in a bit, so you can't be talking 12 prospective deals. And then all of a sudden, bing, one still might happen from left field. Like all of a sudden, Tom Fitzgerald, New Jersey now, if Jack Hughes is injured, all of a sudden he's on the phone. So, and it's funny, I talked to a couple of general managers, current ones as well, because I wondered how much. You got way more people now, way more people. But still they said, no, still one-on-one when we're talking, because stuff gets out there and that, even though that can be unwieldy. Like it was hard to talk to 20 other general managers. It's hard to talk to 31 others as far as, so there's time management that comes into play, but it's exciting, Kyper. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's neat. You're like, it's all consuming, just like the fans are. And people see you and they talk, geez, what are you going to do? And all that. And it's like in no other sport, like no other sport has the same vibe or energy around the trade deadline, whether you're working for a team or in the media or being a fan.
The one I want to ask you, and I'm not even sure if it was a trade deadline, but I know you get asked a lot about Courtnall for John Cordick.
Yeah.
Just in terms of you willing to give up a skilled player to get that type of toughness. How bad was it for the Leafs that you felt like you needed to get a tough guy in there? Were they getting their asses whipped every night? Like, with the pressure that you needed to get them some reinforcements, how bad was that back then?
So that trade was in early November.
Okay.
And also my reality was I had a coach that I inherited in John Brophy, who I really liked quite a bit. So he valued John Kordick from the 1986, when Kordick played a significant role in the playoffs, especially, and Brophy had been in the Montreal organization. So anyway, he and Russ Cordell didn't get along, and when Russ was a healthy scratch a couple of games, I kind of said to Russ, look, just I'll try to help move you somewhere. Okay, this is going to be my one casualty. I already had a few I was able to save, like Borja Saming, for example, whatever. So I made the trade in a big way based on the coach, and that was an inexperienced move by me. Okay, that was an inexperienced, but I take some solace that I didn't grease the skids for Brof. Now, I should have learned from an unpopular trade when Punch Imlach traded Lanny McDonald. He sent him to the Colorado Rockies, so you never saw him, right? You saw Russ Cordell every Saturday, Montreal Canadiens kicking someone's ass, whatever, as you went back up to your office. And so, but I hadn't made the trade that way. I got the coach, the player in question. The player, we didn't have a lot of pre-scouting to know the player had some bigger issues around it. So it's sort of taken a life of its own, because there was Kordick wearing the dark hat, Russ Cordell wearing the white hat. And it wasn't that simple. John Kordick, you talked to Cam Neely, played with him in Portland. I remember when he was getting inducted in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I used to sort of host those that kind of weekend. And he spoke extensively and passionately about playing with him in Portland and what a good player he was and all those things.
Do you think, just one more thing on this, do you think that that's going on as we speak today, where it's maybe the experienced ones, the Coopers, Berube in Toronto, they are going, get me this guy, get me that guy. And again, the pressure that a general manager could feel now to appease.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the thing, Doug McLean has a funny line. He tells other GMs, stay close to the owner because they'll turn on the coach. Okay. But if the owner loves the coach, then all of a sudden, and Pat Burns pushed on Cliff Fletcher, and Cliff was a serious general manager experience. No, Pat Burns worked the phones a little bit, talking to Pierre Lacroix about something, whatever, technically tampering behind the scenes. He wanted to get Mike Ricci, right? A trade deadline, right? Whatever. And so stuff like that happened. I don't know how prevalent it is nowadays, but there have to be some, like John Cooper would be a great example. But I think also that's a winning organization. So they're in harmony about things. Like when you're an organization that was losing, you're sort of grasping at things, trying to fix things. When you've developed a cohesive group together, LA has a real cohesive group. You know that? And that's how you win. And that's how you kind of ride it, like the Jays did for a number of years way back when in that.
Yeah. So if you're Doug Armstrong, for example, and you have Braden Shen right now, like how many teams do you think Kyper are calling on Braden Shen? Like, do you think he's fielding daily?
Yes, I do. And I think any team that's interested in a centerman would have to make that call. That's your job.
So so to your point, when you're talking about this Reggett trade where you have all these people calling you, 3 different teams, like that must be such an incredible, you don't want to trade your captain at all, like especially because you're in a playoff race.
Yeah.
But like to be sitting there at the deadline with what everyone thinks is sort of the prize of the deadline, you could really set up the future of your franchise here for a couple years with the right move. And if you have multiple teams, that's got to be exciting for a general manager.
Well,
it really does.
And again, the cap wasn't a problem back then.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, Sammy and Kyper, what I'm sure is the same now that was back then. So when you talk to the other 20 general managers, just like now, if you're talking to other 31, so you're calling Nick Kypreos, you just would check in, right? How's it going? How's the family? Blah, blah, blah. A bit of a slump, but we're getting going now. You go, you like anybody on our team? Who do you like on our team? Before you said goodbye. And I'll tell you, who you're interested in my team. And this would be in October, November, December, January. Like always, there'd be just that kind of thing. You'd leave after meeting one of the other general managers with a sense that, okay, they like a guy we have down in the American Hockey League. They like Sammy, whatever it may be. They could need a left shot defenseman. So, okay, store, right, whatever. So you got all this stuff. Like, that's the big master plan. And then, like I said, as it goes on, then sometimes all of a sudden, hey, this team's struggling a bit. I'm going to call Nick Kypreos. They're 0-5-2 in their last 7, whatever. I'm going to
see if they're ready to make a decision here of some
like
kind.
Serge Savard called me. Whatever, basically, and just it kind of like they're
interesting
feeling the pressure.
When you say Jimmy Rutherford that he's like, he'll pull the trigger, right?
Yeah, gunslinger.
But like
Cliff was a gunslinger back in the there are certain GMs.
But there's others that need that build up, right? Maybe it's from October, November to March. Maybe they just need reinforcement. They got to hear from their scout. They got to hear from the
David
concession
Poyle
stand.
It was methodical.
Popcorn guy. He can't do it on his own. He needs
Cheveldayoff has got the reputation of being methodical as well. Like, he's not a big gunslinger.
Yeah. Brad Treliving in Toronto makes tons of calls, but doesn't have the reputation of being that guy right now.
I'll tell you one that was off the charts. I don't know who the comparable would be now. Phil Esposito, when he was running the New York Rangers. So he would say, so there wasn't a fit. They go, who do you like? Who do you like elsewhere? And actually, a guy I liked was Bob Rouse. He was playing with Minnesota. And actually, Toronto got him later on after I was gone. They go, like, hey, I want to do a three-way. What do you want? I'll talk to Louis Nanny, and then we'll try. I can't even follow everything. Whatever. Any player, any other player, Phil was thinking on the other level about, okay, we'll get a three-way trade. We'll figure it out. I'll work out something with Minnesota. Anyway, it didn't come to fruition, but he would just talk about a gunslinger. He would just come at him. What was called Trader Phil, right?
Yeah.
And he would come on that. Okay. What about Gretzky? What about you can shake him loose from Edmonton or Los Angeles and maybe get him our way.
You mentioned going back to the coaches and players. Forgot about this. It just came to my mind, but we literally had Craig Berube 3 days ago or 4 days ago. Was that Friday or Thursday? Being like, oh, I love the player. Oh, he's just a great guy. And he went on for 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So I bet you that would be constitute as a coach saying something that maybe a general manager would hear, and it would happen like a week ago.
Well, and Doug Armstrong would work that. He would know. But, of course, Brad Treliving's been around, for a while. Brad Treliving handled a very difficult situation, all that happened in Calgary, right? And now this year you're seeing with Huberdeau coming around, he really made the best of it. But, yeah, certainly – Doug, Ruby likes this guy. Likes this guy. And Brad knows the coach likes this guy. So it'll factor a little bit.
Can Don Sweeney make the best of it right now, knowing that he's still very much looking at a potential situation where if the team gets on a decent run, they can make the playoffs? But where are they going past that? And is this the time to collect assets? So does he stay with trying to convince Brad Marchand to possibly go to Colorado?
Well, go somewhere and then we can re-sign you in the summer.
Yes.
Which you can do now because you're not tampering. He's your property. You can say, hey, you'll come back to a stronger team because we'll get a future.
You think Brad owes that to the Boston Bruins?
No, Matt Sundin went through that in Toronto, right? And Sidney Crosby's going through that in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
That hurt Matt's.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I still have friends that talk about that.
Yeah.
What do they name them? The
Muskoka 5.
Yeah.
But he was just one of them. There were 5 that had the no trades. I don't even think he was in Muskoka. He went home to Sweden. So he got a bad rap. But yeah. And so that's why I think it's been handled well in Boston. But the other point, Nick, they're 2 points out. And they got all this history. Like, there's something special. And it still is there. I know they've lost Bergeron and Char and that, but there's still an element. They've lost
Lindholm and McAvoy this year.
Well, McAvoy too. But they've won with those other guys, that culture thing. And even like that. So who knows? And Swayman gets going. You're 2 points out. I know that's crowded there, but you've felt the pressure that can Columbus and Detroit withstand that pressure? Like Detroit's always come back to the pack. Maybe this is the year they both go through. So anyways, a lot of arrows, but I still think if you're Boston and even the New York Rangers, you're still thinking we expected to be in the playoffs. And as of today, they're still just 2 points out.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the trade to Colorado or trade somewhere else and then go back. That doesn't happen a ton. And I think I would be very wary, especially of maybe Colorado, going there, playing with McKinnon, being on that team, being in that environment. It's like, he's like, I'll sign back in Boston in the summer. For sure, Don. And then he plays for, however many months there, goes to the final or something, God forbid, wins the cup. He's like, this is pretty fun. I think I might stay here. I enjoyed this a lot.
He's not unfamiliar with the area. I think he's owned a home, if I'm not mistaken,
Didn't know
in
that.
Colorado.
Didn't know that.
Oh,
Big time hunter, right?
Hunter.
He hunts out there.
really?
And
He hunts guys' knees on the ice, too. So
he's trained with the altitude out there.
And doesn't Sydney, like Sydney's trainer goes out there, right? They go, they're
Yes.
there too. So that's why they
Yes.
talk. Okay, I'm going to tell you one call. It
get
was
the
funny.
Nova Scotia 3 together.
So it wasn't I don't know if it was a trade deadline call or not, but Lou Lamoriello was the general manager of the New Jersey Devils. So you talk about someone who does things, and he's new. Like I always kid about it. We started at the same time. He lasted 30 years longer, okay, as a general manager. So
by a whisker.
whatever, I had other things to do. So anyway, he called me, Gordy. Gordy, we got a situation here. We might have to do something with the player. Hold on, I'm gonna close my office door. Close the office door. And I'm not gonna say the player's name, but the player was like, talk about fringe. I almost had to find, like, where is this? I don't even know what this, like, the player had played most of the year in the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
But as he goes to close the door, I'm going, Ken Danico or something like that, like what, like whatever. Anyway, and actually, I looked later on. This player did mysteriously just kind of disappear from hockey, but I just,
He was the original Robida Island, wherever he went.
Talk about
Funny,
that's where lunchbag letdown came from.
Part of the sales job, right?
Yes.
Come on, it's selling a car.
And one time, like, there weren't cell phones back then. Lou couldn't. We talked about somebody. I was away in the afternoon. He couldn't get me. And then all of a sudden I look, and he's in the press box. He couldn't get me, so he flew to Toronto to scout the game. So, no wonder they won, right? No wonder they build a winning organization. There all of a sudden he goes,
He also fired a coach, went down and he also fired a coach and then went down himself. So
yeah, but they won.
Yeah.
They developed a winning culture there. I got a lot of time and a lot of respect.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
A lot of
Big
people,
time.
a lot of
Big time.
people, especially with his work ethic, his commitment. The guy's been
still doing it.
It's his life, right?
Well, and like him and Brian
He's a
Burke,
lifer.
him and Brian Burke are the two guys. When you get kicked in the onions, they're among the first calls.
Yeah.
Now Berkey stays with you, right? I mean, whatever. But that stuff, like, it's easy when you're riding high, but when there's been some adversity dealt your way, all of a sudden no one's returning your calls. It's a very different world. And so you appreciate the ones that are quick.
Yeah.
And he is among those.
You think he's a seller, Lou, this week?
Boy.
Buck Nelson?
Yeah. I mean, what else can they buy? They got the coach last year. They did Bo Horvat. I mean, they seem to have some of the, like, they had a lot of pieces that expiring contracts and they stayed, like Anders Lee and all those. But it seems there's too much sameness to me with the New York Islanders.
5 points back with 5 teams in front of them.
Not jumping that many teams.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Gord, fabulous week with you, man.
Thanks,
really
guys.
Appreciate it.
I'll do the extended clap.
You do
Round of applause.
This comes above your work at the NHL Network.
NHL Network
which
Radio,
is,
NHL Morning Skate.
Morning Skate, which I think I might be scheduled on
Yeah, you are.
tomorrow morning.
We said, who is the guy who's on top of the trades now? You got the trades boards going. You're the guy, the trade tracker. So we appreciate landing you as a guest.
We're not breaking up anytime soon, Gord.
Okay.
Okay.
It sounds. We keep trying to, but we keep, we're like Simon and Garfunkel. We're kind of like the hockey version of that.
So Sammy and I are looking forward to Justin Bourne coming back with multiple Mickey Mouse stories, right?
Yeah, wearing his rags because that's all he can afford after going to Disneyland.
All right, once again, our thanks to Gord Stellick this week. Justin Bourne returns tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.